Welcome to Roll, Ponder, and Play, a podcast dedicated to crafting stories through the application of role-playing game engines, combined with creative thinking and propelled into the ether by the barest of prompts. I'm Jarrett Hess, taking on all the roles of Game Master, Solo Player, Author, and Narrator. Come with me on a journey, and together let us explore realms of shadow, danger, and wonder. One roll can decide the fate of many things. Welcome to Episode 5 of Shadow of the Demon. In our previous episode, Renchant and Tatyana attend their signing ceremony and become officially engaged, or betrothed. There is much feasting and celebrating their potential union. Some in the party, Raena foremost among them, have misgivings about Renchant's motives, but after confronting him, she eventually becomes convinced that Renchant is sincere in his affection towards Tatyana. The next day, the party leaves Inolulan and they travel south for 3 days through mountainous terrain upon the King's Road, a mostly well-traveled and mostly north-south highway that runs the length of the kingdom of Craewen. Out of the mountains, the well-patrolled road turns muddy. During one of their rests, they see signs of war on the horizon as they witness a mobilization of Craewen's forces. Entire regiments begin marching through the countryside towards the kingdom's borders with Kadolan. The party continues their journey, and after 10 more days, they finally arrive in Southmarch, the country's current capital. Gaining entrance to the city, they proceed toward the palace. Its whitewashed walls atop a large hill in the center of the city, catching the dying winter sun. And now, on to Episode 5 of Shadow of the Demon. Raena's horse clopped ahead of the others as she led the way up the winding serpent-like street that coiled its way up the large hill. As they rose in height, the sun finally gasped out its last spears of molten red and gold, giving way to the purple blush of twilight. The homes that twisted up the hill with the road also grew in size and ornamentation, as if the wealth and power and prestige of King Kirat's family watered a small garden of like-minded individuals in and around the palace. The largest homes bore balconies of cut stone set atop colonnades, where once lush vines and vegetation now withered in winter's grasp. Yet the weather did not wither the wealthy's penchant for feasting and celebration, for the party heard much of both from many a home as they drew near the palace. A gusting wind blew flakes of snow from the streets into their faces and caused their cloaks to flap like heralds of portent. "Have you met King Kirat, Renchant?" Tatyana asked him, a nervous excitement causing her eyes to shine. They rode up the hill together, horses' hooves clopping on cobbled stone, as they rounded another twisting bend that drew them ever nearer to the palace gate. "No," Renchant said. "In fact, I've never met any of the royal family. I try to steer clear of such people. They tend to be spoiled brats who then want their advisors and counselors to ever be at their beck and call." "I think you'd enjoy being a court mage," Tatyana said. "You do you? Well, being near the power of kings and queens would have its perks, I imagine. But royalty also draws the assassin's knives, as we have seen. And while I am practiced in using my magic to protect myself and others when it comes to a fight, as you well know, in truth I am no real fighter." "Oh, but who would have guessed, given your less than scholarly physique?" She grinned at him, giving him a look that made him flush like a schoolboy. One would have thought you had spent your days riding and hunting, and on long walks, given your current constitution." "My dear," he smiled back, "you are an insufferable flatterer, you know. And while it is true that my parentage has bred tall, dark, and handsome offspring, well, my sister was beautiful, not handsome, but you know what I mean. And while I do enjoy long promenades now and again, that alone does not make one less of a pincushion when it comes to blades in the dark. No, I am glad that I am no court mage. Imagine always having to bow and scrape at every royal whim. There would be no time for reading and libraries and exploration and experimentation, my dear." "Ah," he gave a sigh. "'Tis a pity that Knife's Edge took to the torch. It is said they had a marvelous library." "So you have said before, a few times in fact, if I recall. It grows no truer with the repetition, you know," she bantered. Do tell me that you enjoy reading," Renchant said, a pained expression edging his face. "For should you not, we shall have to annul our engagement, I fear." "I enjoy reading," she grinned up at him. Below them, the winking lights of South March's cook fires spread out like a mantle of night, bedecked with orange fireflies. "Let's take a small break and ask some questions to get a feel for things at the palace and the city." "Is all well at the palace?" "I think there's a 50-50 chance, and on a roll of a 7, I get a yes." "Security will naturally be high, but that is to be expected with the city on war footing. What else is going on in the city?" "I will use the mag, marks adventure glyphs. I get crossed blades, circle of magic, a trident, a card, a boot, jellyfish, claws with bubbly stuff, acid, web, puzzle cube." Some ideas. And now some random phrases to round it out. Harm, art, break, trials. That actually fits with the last few tiles on the mag, I think. Are the crossed blades a duel? 50-50 chance? On a 6 I get a yes, but it's more than just a duel. I see. I have come up with something and have asked additional questions. I will reveal the results of those later. As they neared the palace, moving up the ever-winding road, they heard the sounds of boots marching on the cobbled streets, in time to a pair of drums. And soon the party pulled off to the side of the road to let a regiment of soldiers pass them, moving down the hill. From some of the pale faces on the younger men, unused to marching in armor, it seemed this unit was in training. In fact, all about them they witnessed the preparations for war going on in numerous forges, the smells of molten metal and leather, of horse flesh wet with snow being shod in hard iron. With the future uncertain and the threat of war with Kadolan growing more certain, the city and the kingdom were making preparations. South March was full to bursting with refugees that had poured in from Knife's Edge and from military units forming up. In and around the palace and out on the streets and in neighborhood squares below them, the constant sound of training and recruitment and fiery forging of implements of war filled the air. Bugles and bells tolled, drums thrummed as military units came together in one vast mobilization. At the palace gate, Raena spoke their purpose, and they were met by a steward, an older man with silver shoulder-length hair and a stately bearing, named Perron. A sable cloak of silver and gold edging, its border snapped in the wind, and his gold chain of office hung about his neck, gleaming in the firelight. "Open the gates and let these through. They are on the king's errand. Boy, you there, Kason!" Perrin shouted to a stable hand, a tall youth of not quite teen years, but large enough for his age. He leapt to his feet. "Grab your companions and see to their mounts. Quickly now, it's cold out." The well-muscled lad with freckles and a shock of hair the color of straw that peeked out from beneath his brown cloak darted off and returned with 2 more companions. "If it pleases you, sir and lady," Kason said to Renchant and Tatyana, and he helped them down and then took their mounts, his head turning to give Tatyana a long double take. Renchant scowled, and the boy ducked his head and pulled their horses into the royal stables. The party dismounted and stretched, working loose saddle-sore limbs from their first leg of their long journey toward the southern regions of Craewen. "This way," Perrin said. "Come this way, if you please." And the steward led them deeper inside the palace grounds, past elite royal guards dressed in sturdy breastplates lined with blue silver, metal helms with plumes atop their heads, rich blue cloaks hung over one shoulder. The guards eyed the party with a steely gaze as they neared a large rectangular building, but with Perrin leading the way, none was challenged. The palace was more than a single building, but a complex of buildings. Some housed the servants, others housed the royal guard, and others still served purposes that could only be guessed at. Bright torches guttered in the wind as they strode across ice-slick flagstones, and smoky oil lanterns hung from hooks from archways that they passed beneath. They neared the large central building. Its white walls were textured with crushed glass, glinting with the light from the torches and lanterns. The building was huge, 5 stories high, with numerous wings, towers, and minarets, and portions were still in construction. Perrin clapped his hands, and 2 servant girls in their teens in simple white dresses darted down the steps outside, shivering in the cold. "Ah, good. See that these guests are given apartments within the palace, the guest wing, 3rd floor. Bring them food and drink, and what comforts we can bestow. They have the haggard look of travel." The girls nodded and curtsied to Perrin and the party. Renchant warmed up a smile. "You do know where the word came from, do you not?" Renchant said to Perrin. Perrin blinked back at him. "I'm sorry?" "Travail. It means, burdensome activities that are trying and the like. Travel. Travail. Travel. You see?" "Renchant," Tatyana said, tugging at his hand. "Perhaps now is not the time." "Ah," Perrin said, his half-serious and half-bemused expression yielding to a thin and fleeting smile, as if he understood now only too well. "I see. Yes, most illuminating, sir. Now," he turned to Raena, "once you are settled, I shall visit you and your party directly." Let's ask the Oracle a few questions. Were there any problems with the funds that the party was promised? A 50-50 chance. On a 4, I get a no. What about the other items on the mag results? Is Perrin aware of those? On a 50-50 chance, I get a 4. A no. The servant girls led them to the 3rd floor, where the party was given a corner wing of connected rooms richly decorated with lush white carpets and expensive dark stained wood paneling and azure tapestries with gold threadwork. The servants lit the fire, and soon the crackling flames began to eat away at the chill of the expansive apartments. "If there's nothing else, we shall bring your food up directly, milady," the older servant girl said to Raena. The royal ranger shook her head, and the 2 girls curtsied once more and departed together. Renchant stood by the heavy glass panes of the window in their guest quarters apartment. It rattled and shook from the gusting winds of winter. From a near cloudless sky, pinpricks of light from the stars speckled the expanse. Below him he could hear their horses and make out the stables in the gloom, and further below them still, the sprawling city of Southmarch with its orange specks of light. These are the guest quarters? Tatyana asked, eyes wide. Taxes must go somewhere, I assume, Renchant said, with a smile. Jarvis and Dosakan frowned at such obvious luxury on display, but Kendrak grinned at all of them. Rooms fit for a king, Kendrak said, and with his plate armor still on, he sunk deep into the couch, from whose grasp he struggled to extricate himself. It was during one of Kendrak's flailings about that they heard a knock on the door, and Perron entered. I see you are getting situated. His gaze fell upon Kendrak, and he frowned. Then his gaze turned to Raena. He dug into his cloak and pulled out a pouch that jangled, heavy with coin. Your agreed-upon payment, he said. I do hope you don't mind platinum. Gold can be sometimes so inconveniently heavy. Or, well, so I've heard some say. Probably something King Kirot says on a daily basis, the poor man, Renchant said under his breath to Tatyana, a twitch of a smile on his lips. She grinned back at him. Raena took the black velvet pouch and opened it, fingering through the gleaming coins. So they got 100 platinum pieces, that's 1,000 gold pieces, to share amongst the party. This was the agreed-upon partial payment for the party to take this mission that we discussed in Episode 1. Our thanks, Raena said. She nodded and passed the pouch over to Jarvis, who began to separate its contents into small piles for each of them. Perron glanced out the window, and his frown deepened. I know you're on a busy errand for the king, but be forewarned that there have been shortages on foodstuffs. Prices are quite high, and some goods are simply not available. What with all the refugees and riffraff coming into the city, now the regiments are being formed up and adding to the mess. I do apologize for the rather plain fare of leftovers you will be served this evening. And the king and his lady, are they well? Raena asked. I think that's likely. On a 7, I get a yes. Well enough, Perron added. Very busy, of course, to meet with you. There are so many things to see to, you understand, especially with war on the horizon. I do apologize that I myself cannot stay longer in chat. His hands twisted together. But I must be about other duties. He gave a slight bow to Raena, and a second to the rest of the party. Dinner is being brought up shortly. Servants just outside are standing by should you need anything else. His Majesty is aware of your assignment, and he wishes you every success in this mission. Please leave as soon as you can resupply. Is the palace magically warded against external magical attacks and scrying? I think that is somewhat likely, and on a 5 I get a yes, but this is a new palace, so the wards are not particularly strong yet, as they get built up to full strength over time. I will roll up some more stuff on the Oracle and reveal it later. Upon the hills of Perron leaving, a half-dozen servants brought in dinner upon a score of silver trays of food covered with silver lids with pitchers of wine. The scents of anise mingled with blueberry and sweet peppers to delight Renchant's senses. His stomach rumbled, and Kendrak finally managed to get up out of his couch, the prospect of hot food giving him the needed incentive. Is there anything else you need? The oldest girl asked Raena. No, this shall be fine. Thank you. Very good. If you need anything, milady, just ring this bell, and one of us shall see to your needs directly. She pointed to a twisted golden rope that hung from the ceiling near the large table by the fireplace. With that and another bevy of curtsies to the rest of the party, the servant girls left. A fine spread lay before them. Stir-fried flat rice noodles with chestnut, squash blossoms, courgette flowers, and sweet pepper on a bed of sliced runner bean and blueberries, served with poached eggs, sage pie, mild cheddar, and anise and shrew soup. and that is from the MealGen generator on chaoticshiny.com. I love the Chaotic Shiny generators. The party commenced their meal. Dosakan and Kendrock seemed to be having a contest on who could eat the most soonest.
"These are leftovers?" Tatyana gasped in disbelief,
her eyes sparkling as she breathed in the steam from her plate. "I seem to remember saying something about spoiled royal brats," Renchant added with a twinkle in his eye as he twisted the steaming spiced noodles about his fork and savored his first bite. The evening quickly passed away in laughter and feasting. Hours later, Jarvis, Dosakan, and Kendrock sat drinking from large flagons of wine, playing cards and dice. The Dragonborn didn't have any money to join in the betting, so he watched the other two play and gave advice while he became more and more drunk on the ever-flowing bounty from the royal purse strings. The Dragonborn had a near insatiable appetite for food and drink, yet even he eventually lay his head upon the table, and each snore he gave rattled the silverware, his misty white breath adding a lattice-work sheen of ice upon his goblet. Raena looked up from a book titled The Essence of Lore, A History of the Elves from a Human Perspective, and watched Tatyana and Renchant. The book had a number of facts wrong about the history of the elves, but it did add a human perspective, which she found interesting. Humans. Tatyana, the erstwhile servant girl of Inolulan, sat cross-legged on the rich carpeted floor, her clean dress tucked under her legs, her clean hair done up in a braid that hung over one shoulder, revealing the graceful curve of her neck. She sat at the feet of Renchant, who sat on a stool, his back to the fire's warmth, his bass voice rising and falling as he spoke in low tones to the girl. The pair talked and laughed together. Ever since Inolulan, Raena had seen that Renchant had begun to teach Tatyana the basics of spellcasting, and each night after traveling, they had practiced reciting the spells and drawing glyphs in the air, and tonight was no exception. Renchant was at least true to his word and seemed intent on fulfilling his part of the bargain to make her his apprentice. Over the long days of travel, he had explained the basics of harnessing powerful forces that surrounded and imbued the planes of existence. Raena understood some of it. Her race, the elves, had long been around magic and knew much of its lore. But Renchant was indeed intelligent and well-studied, and Raena was soon lost as his metaphysical musings passed from master to pupil. Is Tatyana getting it? She is smart, so I will say it is likely. And on a roll of a 10, I get a yes and. And it looks like she is particularly adept at it. Well. Hopefully Renchant doesn't become jealous. I'm going to turn in now, Raena said to Renchant and Tatyana. Don't stay up too late. She stopped. The young girl had a blue flame dancing on her fingertip. Look! Tatyana twisted and laughed up at Raena with such obvious joy it made Raena smile. Well done, Renchant said, beaming. He touched her hand and added a small, fiery unicorn which reared up and chased her bobbing blue flame. Very well done indeed, he mused, leaning back and stroking his beard. I've never seen anyone take to a first spell so readily. Aside from myself, of course. Of course, Raena said under her breath with a chuckle. It's amazing, Tatyana said, and the flame jumped to her other palm, the unicorn following suit, leaping from one hand to the other. She concentrated, and her flame grew to a fist-sized ball of fire that flashed out, consuming the unicorn and resulting in a globe of blue light that hovered in front of her. I did it! I cast it, and I... Your first light spell, Renchant said and shook his head. Let's see what else you can do. See if you can freeze the wine pitcher there. The spell is rather simple. It goes like this. Watch closely. Raena smiled again at them both. Tatyana now knelt in front of him, one hand on Renchant's knee, leaning forward, eager eyes watching his mouth and hands intently. Renchant's face bore the joy of teaching his favorite subject and being in the presence of a beautiful young woman. Raena hoped they wouldn't do anything foolish. As an elf, she had been around the world much longer than these short-lived humans, and foolishness seemed an almost native inborn trait to their race. She stood and went to her room, where she shut her door and spread out a kingdom map the servants had brought her. She sat down and began to study the route and make plans for the next phase of her journey. Her thoughts of Tatyana and Renchant buried under the thoughts of the road ahead. Tatyana watched Renchant carefully by the fireplace. It felt good to be clean and warm again. Renchant was right about travel being a travail, and she was not anxious to get back on the horse, though her body had eventually acclimated to the regular punishment it had endured each day. And thankfully her mud-spattered clothing was even now being laundered by the servants outside. Renchant, too, had cleaned up, and his close-cropped beard and mustache smelled like peppermint oil. His eyes shone in the firelight. The clock ticked late into the night, and Tatyana watched Renchant carefully. "You see?" Renchant asked Tatyana. She smiled. She enjoyed his closeness more and more each day. "With the rune of divination, you can see the energies about you." "You mean with that eye symbol thingy?" "That's part of it, yes. Now move your hand down like this, to close the rune to completion." He demonstrated, and her finger followed suit. It trailed blue light in the half-dark of the room as she chanted, repeating the words he had taught her. The fire in the fireplace died down to frail flames and burnished coals. Torches guttered in their sconces, signaling the end of their lifespan. "I think so," she said. She followed his motions and finished the ritual, and she could see something. It was like a second pair of eyes. Renchant was glowing, and not just from pride at her learning. He was literally glowing. Yes, I do see it," she exclaimed with a laugh as she saw streams of energy coming from Renchant. "You're lighting up like Midwinter's Eve. That amulet, it's magical?" "Yes, the amulet of Corvus. I got it after defeating a dark elf in the service of a demon," Renchant said, smiling down at her. "A demon?" She stood up and moved about the room, trying to find sources of magic beyond Renchant, who fairly blazed with multicolored streams of light. "You mean a devil?" Somewhat. They are related," he said, and lit his pipe from a candle, and then leaned back on the settee and puffed out a smoke ring, which twisted and melted and reformed into a smoky devil head, complete with horns and pointed teeth. It floated in front of Tatyana's face, and fire arced between its mouth. She laughed and batted at the smoky visage with her hand until it dissipated, reforming into normal smoke that spiraled up to the rafters. "They are both spirits of another realm," Renchant continued. "A demon comes from a shadow plane, a place, a realm of pain, darkness, spirit, pure chaos. So ravaged are they with hate for our orderly realm that they are bent on its destruction. A devil is also in torment, it is said, for sins they have committed either in this life or some other life." Rarely had she felt so alive. She didn't want to go to sleep. Renchant had been right about magic being so wonderful. Renchant adopted the tone of a patient teacher. She only half listened as he forged ahead with his response. Did he even know he sounded so pompous? She sighed. She had her work cut out for her. to mold such a man. But she would do it. She did love him. They are known to spin a lie with just enough truth to make it palatable. They are deceivers to the core, so say a multitude of clerics. They seek the enslavement of our realm and our souls more than the simple destruction that a demon desires. Anyway, I can refer you to several interesting tomes on the subject of demons, if you're interested. One of my favorites is Essider's 13 Shades of Chaos, where she mentions that... "Oh, look," she squealed, delighted. "The walls are glowing blue." Does Renchant know the Palace Mage? There's a 50-50 chance, and on a 2, I get a no. Ah, yes, those energies are from the Warding School of Magic. In fact, if you know where to look, the palace has several warding glyphs carved unobtrusively and quite cleverly into certain portions of the architecture and items. A glyph carved into the stone? Why? It makes the magic endure for much longer and strengthens it as well. Your spell here will endure a few moments longer, but his carved in stone, it will endure for much longer. The mage's handiwork is thorough, and he seems fairly competent. I hope to meet him. Him? What if it's a woman? Well, I'd like to meet her then, if that's the case. He nodded in slow acquiescence. She smiled at him and watched as the blue lights began to disappear one by one. Her smile faltered and also disappeared. "That's strange," she said. "The blue lights are fading away." Nonsense, Renchant said. "Your spell should be active for some time yet. And the lights from those wardings wouldn't disappear unless..." He trailed off and stood up, knocking over a goblet of wine which splashed across some scrolls he had rolled out from a nearby bookcase. He didn't even notice. "What is it?" she asked. He snatched up his staff and looked upwards. His eyes were fixed on something above him. "I thought I heard..." "Well, the lights are almost gone. See?" She looked out the window. "The blue lights are going, and now they're all gone. Wow, it sure is dark outside. I can't even see the stars anymore. Do you think it's going to rain?" "What?" Renchant asked, distracted. "But, Renchant, those clouds don't look normal. They're black like oil," she breathed, a tremor in her voice, and she took a step back from the window. And they're rising from below." In 2 strides, Renchant moved in front of Tatyana and peered out the window. Outside, a thick darkness churned, a miasma of twisting grays and blacks obscuring the streets below. "Stars and demons," he muttered. She felt a prickle of goose flesh form on her arms and neck when the fire guttered. She began backing away from the window some more. "Renchant," she breathed, I think maybe we should call some guards and..." "Raena! Kendrak! Up and to arms!" Renchant shouted. Then he turned to Tatyana. "Quickly," he said. "Move by the light of the fireplace. Chant that spell I told you to memorize. The defensive ward. Do it!" I don't know if I... She couldn't keep the fear from her voice. Something was terribly, terribly wrong. She could feel a heaviness in the air. "Do it with me. Now. Trust me. And no matter what happens, keep chanting. You can do this." His eyes held hers, and he began chanting. She joined her chant to his, as boiling clouds of night rose up to the height of their windows. Thank you for joining us, and I sincerely hope you enjoyed what you experienced. If you would like to support Roll, Ponder, and Play, you can do so in a number of ways. You can give the show a positive review on your podcatcher of choice. You can share the show with your friends and family and on your socials. Nothing beats word of mouth as a way to bring in new listeners. You can join my Patreon at patreon.com/Roll, Ponder, and Play. There you can find show notes and transcripts, as well as other projects I'm involved in. And paid subscribers get access to subscriber-only episodes, shows, and other content. Finally, you can simply reach out to me and say hello. Comments from you are what inspire me to keep doing this, and I'd sincerely love to hear what you think of the show. To do so, you can find me on my Patreon, or on Discord at Roll, Ponder, and Play, or by email at rollponderandplay@gmail.com. Until we meet again on Roll, Ponder, and Play, may your own dice rolls ever bring you success.